Hey Technostuds! It's becoming more and more common for us to interlink our systems together. We call that federation. So in this video, let's cover what federation is and what it looks like. We'll start out by talking about what federation is. We'll get into trust direction, we'll talk about transitive trust, we'll talk about federation versus what SSO is, we'll talk about protocols, and then identity services. The idea behind federation is creating a trust between different systems. So here we've got a system, let's say A, and a system B. We can create a trust between these so that way when you authenticate with one, you actually are going to be trusted by another. Let's come up with a little scenario as an example. Let's say we have company A here, and they've just been purchased by company B. So you are part of company A, and when you log in, you're logging on to company A's resources. But now that they're merged to company B, you need to access some of their resources as well. It creates a trust between these two entities, so that way when you log on to company A's resources, you also have access to company B, and that you have access because of this trust relationship. A federation trust could either be one-way or two-way. One-way would just mean that one organization trusts another organization, but the reverse is not true. A two-way, obviously, would be where they trust each other. There's also something called a transitive trust. If company A trusts company B, and company B trusts company C, then company A trusts company C. If it's a non-transitive, that means that this would not be the case, that company A just trusts company B. A federated ID is that you have an electronic ID and certain attributes that can be used to access multiple different entities' resources. Let's look at a common example that's being created nowadays. Let's give a little scenario. You're setting up a bank of web servers, and these are going to deliver some sort of service to your end user. However, one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to store people's usernames and passwords. You want to offload that to another entity. So what you can do is you can create a trust where you trust and create a relationship with a Google or a Facebook or some big service, Microsoft, some service that offers these services. And then what will happen is when your users try to access your bank of servers here, you would send them to be authenticated with Facebook or Google, and then once authenticated, then they would have access to your services. Now this may sound a little like single sign-on, and rightfully so. The two concepts are very similar, and there's some overlap between the two. And so what is the difference between single sign-on and these federated IDs? Well, with single sign-on, you're really dealing with a company. And that company might be the company you're working for, and when you sign on to that company, they've set up single sign-on to have access to all of their resources. And perhaps it's also dealing with another company or another entity outside the organization that they've created some sort of trust with, but it's still part of the resources that are available to this company. It's not a separate set of resources. Whereas with federated ID, it's the concept where this company A, may have no association with Facebook or the Google or whatever it is that they're using as this authenticator. So your federated ID is with this other company. And so when you try to log into company A's resources, they're just using the Google and Facebook for the authentication piece, and then you have access to company A. Now, there are quite a few protocols out there that are helping support all of this. OpenID, SAML, Shibboleth are all examples of protocols that help create this scenario, create this ability to do this. This has spurred on a whole new business model called identity services. If company A wants to do some verification steps before somebody creates an account with them, then perhaps they hire company B to carry out those. So if I go to company A and try to create an account, they're going to send me to company B to actually create an account. And perhaps that account even requires extra steps for that verification. Perhaps I need to turn in my driver's license or passport or something to prove who I am. And now I am going to be authenticating, or I'm going to identify myself through company B to gain access to company A's resources. In this video, we went over what federation is. We talked about those trust. We talked about trust direction. We talked about what a transitive and non-transitive trust is. We got into federated ID, what that looks like. We got into federation versus SSO and how those two are different. We talked about some protocols, and we finished it up by talking about identity services.